Hello, everyone, and welcome to this keynote from the 2022 Monaco Streaming Film Festival. We're joined today with the AEW president and owner, head of creative, and also the owner and booker of Ring of Honor, Tony Khan. We're going to be talking about his perspective on the streaming industry and how it relates to his wrestling businesses. He's a friend of the streaming festival. We've done one before. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. I'm your host, the Monaco Streaming Film Festival's lead correspondent, Gavin. When I'm not doing this, I'm the senior media analyst at Variety Intelligence platform, covering all the worlds of streaming and free streaming and sports rights, etc. So we're down for a very good conversation today. Tony, welcome.
Thank you, Gavin. It's great to see you, and I'm excited to be here again with you and looking forward to another great conversation with you.
Thank you. Yeah, they never seem to disappoint, which is good. So before we get into it, for anyone who hasn't seen the last ones or doesn't know, could you tell us a little bit about AEW and then also your recent acquisition?
Yes, absolutely. AEW is a pro wrestling company. We launched in 2019. I started working on it in 2018, but really it's something I think we've been building up to almost my whole life. I've been a fan of pro wrestling for well over 30 years since I was a really small kid. And we launched a show called AEW Dynamite. It's on Wednesday nights on TBS, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, every Wednesday on TBS. And Dynamite is also a show I've been writing as a fan and a lover of pro wrestling since I was 12 years old in 1995. And Dynamite is now very much a reality. We put on 2 great hours of wrestling every Wednesday night on TBS and on other channels all over the world. We have a worldwide presence. And the success of Wednesday Night Dynamite has allowed us to launch a second show, Friday Night Rampage, which is on TNT, typically at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. But recently we've had some time shifting with the playoffs happening in American sports. We've got a great base for both shows. They're on big companies, big TV properties all over the world. You know, in England, we have the biggest TV audience for pro wrestling. In the UK, we are on ITV and ITV4. So every week we have the highest rated wrestling shows in the UK. And in the US, we're very competitive. We have shows that rank amongst the very top every Wednesday. And also now we've launched Rampage, which has had some really big ratings on Friday also. It's a little bit later time slot, typically, compared to that really prime 8 to 10 Wednesday night slot. And very often we are the number one show on Wednesdays on all of cable and satellite. During the playoffs, there for many weeks, we've just been right behind the NBA coverage, and the NBA playoff coverage is the only thing that had finished ahead of us. So we've had a really good run and a really successful run with those shows, Dynamite on TBS, Rampage on TNT. We've got a great group of pro wrestlers, and that was part of the business model. The media rights for pro wrestling were escalating very quickly. I saw in 2018, and the amount of pro wrestlers that would be out of contract in 2019, I felt like there would be enough stars out there to launch a wrestling company that would be competitive and have as good a roster as anybody in the world. And we've been able to grow it, build it, and I believe build the best roster in all of pro wrestling, where we've got some of the best men and women on the planet. And the company's grown very quickly. I think we've exceeded all expectations. It was actually in April of 2018. I was at a party in Beverly Hills, and I saw a friend from LA who at the time was the president of TBS and TNT. And I had the idea, I don't know why that was the right time, but it was the right time to bring it up, that I thought we could build something really special here and launch a company that is now AEW. And thanks to the great partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery, we've been able to bring pro wrestling all over the world.
And tell us as well, like you just recently finished closing the acquisition of Ring of Honor, another wrestling brand with a long history in the US. So what attracted you to that?
Well, Ring of Honor has an amazing history. They've been operating for 20 years. And it was actually right at the 20th anniversary that week when we announced that I had agreed to make the purchase. We recently closed on that purchase, and they had put an event out scheduled in early April which was a difficult situation because I had already agreed to buy the company, and it wasn't that difficult in the end because I was very happy to effectively write and produce that show and book the matches and run the show. And not only did I enjoy doing it, but it was the most successful event Ring of Honor has had in many years. It's one of the, I would say, 2 or 3 highest grossing Ring of Honor pay-per-views of all time in their 20 years of operating. And not only the highest they've had in many years, but it was at a level, I would say, let's say somewhere between 10 and 15 times the numbers they had been doing on pay-per-view for their more recent shows. So we saw a huge escalation in the business. It's not as big a company as AEW right now, but it is a great company with a great history. And the access to that library gives us some kind of new asset because we're a big family here. And in addition to being the owner and CEO of AEW now, with that Ring of Honor library that I've got, we can put together a library, I think, that is very compelling and very exciting for the wrestling fans and continues to grow every week, not just with the AEW television, but also our AEW pay-per-view business, which I'm sure we could talk about in detail, how that's grown and what an exciting business case that is. And in particular, the premium excitement, the real vibe around our pay-per-views, because they are only quarterly and because they have a great reputation for delivering the best action in pro wrestling. They've really satisfied our customers, which is why all of our pay-per-view franchises have grown year over year. And now as we start year 4 of AEW this week, we're approaching our own 3-year anniversary starting year 4. We continue to see that growth in pay-per-view and our TV business being really strong. And the Ring of Honor assets potentially provide us the tools to build a streaming library to give something to the fans where they have access right now that doesn't exist to all these hours of footage in one place with the best of AEW and the best of Ring of Honor, as we've really captured hundreds of great hours of AEW so far in 3 years and continue to grow it each week with more shows. But Ring of Honor in their 20 years, they've got thousands of hours of excellent footage. And together, I think there's real synergy, which is why I thought it was a good purchase and a great asset given my portfolio in pro wrestling and the success of AEW.
And I think on the topic of synergy there, a large number of your talent base now have appeared in Ring of Honor at some point in the past. So it's not just a case of having a wrestling library, but it's one that actually meshes very well within the confines of your current roster.
Absolutely. I think that is true. And also there is similarity to the high impact, exciting styles of pro wrestling in AEW and Ring of Honor. So not only a lot of the top stars in AEW came through Ring of Honor, a lot of the top stars in WWE came through Ring of Honor. So a lot of the competitors, best people, really honed their trade, developed their skills, and rose to the top of the profession first in Ring of Honor.
I will probably have more questions for you on streaming strategies for that later. Let's talk a bit about your global content and maybe the role that streaming has to play, because I know that people I've read online every now and again people saying that they can access AEW shows via certain services, legal services, I should say, not not LimeWire. How many countries are you in, and how do you distribute?
That is a great question. It continues to grow. We're in dozens of countries all over the world, and that continues to expand. I can come back to you with an exact number. I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me. I should have it for you, but I can get that number to you, and we'll have it hopefully by the time this airs for you. And then I would say, our global business strategy, as we've expanded through not only TV, but also international streaming services, there's a library of AEW content available worldwide that domestically does not exist. We've got a partnership here with Warner Brothers Discovery that's going to allow us to hopefully create something that will not only give the wrestling fans, most importantly, access to all the great matches from AEW, all of our TV shows, Dynamite, Rampage, and our big pay-per-view events, AEW Revolution, Double or Nothing, AEW All Out, and Full Gear. I think that the Ring of Honor library, together with that, gives us something potentially we can build a new product here in America. And for international, we've got AEW Plus, and AEW Plus offers at a really affordable price access to the shows live before they air on the local TV. In Europe, for example, in the UK, Dynamite starts at 1 a.m. GMT and ends at 3 a.m. So a lot of people will tend to watch the ITV tape delayed over the weekend or on Monday and Tuesday as they show Dynamite and Rampage both on ITV and ITV4 during the week. And a lot of the super fans and the most loyal want to watch the show live, and we provide a solution for that and also a library of archive content there. And there's been a great reception to that, and it's been a big revenue driver for us internationally. And we think that that potentially could be a great driver for us domestically as well. And I have Aaron from our PR team here. So hopefully, Aaron, you can come back and give me that before we log out, and I can give Gavin that answer I should have had in front of me here. We have so many exciting things to go through. I forgot to put that in front of me, how many countries we are in now, because it's constantly growing and changing. So by the end of our conversation, I'll be able to tell you.
Don't worry. I always forget one or two things when I'm presenting. It's just there's so much information that you're not a computer.
It's a lot, and it's also a number that is changing frequently, and I don't want to understate it. I think so. From memory, I believe we've added a number of countries since the last time I spoke with you. So I'll come up with a good number for you here.
Well, on that note, what leads to a country sort of picking up the AEW content now? I mean, is it the fact that it's just doing well in other regions? Are there people?
Well, there are a number of countries where Fight is available, where people can use the Fight app, which is really available anywhere people have access to any smart device. And because Fight is linked up to smart TVs and obviously phones, tablets, and laptops and all computers, then through Fight TV, outside of North America, there's great access to it. But here in the US and Canada, it's not the same. In the US specifically, with our Warner Brothers Discovery deal, people aren't really using Fight to access AEW, but they could use it to access more independent wrestling. But internationally, Fight is a great platform for us. And with that base, people in countries all over the world can watch AEW. But what we're trying to do is also penetrate to a more of a mainstream audience, people who aren't using that app to watch pro wrestling, people just watching big networks. So again, ITV and ITV4 is a great example in the UK. Sky Italia in Italy, great partner for us. Eurosport Discovery, even before the merger and with Discovery coming in for the acquisition of Warner Brothers and creating the new Warner Brothers Discovery company that we're really excited to be a part of. We had already been working with Discovery. I was kind of thinking ahead on that one. And we put a TV deal in India together that's been really great for us with Eurosport. So we have a number of TV partners around the world. And again, the exact number, I'll come back to you here before we're off. But it continues to grow. And there's an even bigger list of countries where people can access via streaming. So there's multiple ways to see the show most places. Whereas here in the US, there are multiple ways to see the show, but primarily TBS on Wednesday nights, TNT on Friday nights. And there's a lot of way to access those channels now also, with cable, satellite, Hulu, live TV, Sling, YouTube TV, a number of ways to access cable and satellite channels also.
Oh, I'm really glad you actually mentioned that about Eurosport, because I have seen some analysis sort of doom mongering about, oh no, Discovery's not going to want this content because it's, and it doesn't sound like that at all if you've got international deals with them. So hopefully that can put some of that rumor mongering to bed. They
also really want the content. I don't know why that's yeah, but it's really exciting partnership, and they've been great with us so far. We're getting to know each other with a new group of people, but there's also a lot of great people from Warner that are going to be a part of this that we've got great experiences with. So they're very excited about this, as are we.
So you mentioned Fight. I know that's one of the ways that you can get a pay-per-view, but you've embraced streaming as a distribution format for pay-per-view events across the world. How has it being available on streaming, has it helped grow? Is it easier for someone to get a pay-per-view than it used to be when it was like the TV business? Is it just like a point and click, just makes it a lot easier for someone to decide to watch?
Yeah, as with so many entertainment properties and live sporting events, and I think this would apply to many things we could talk about. There are so many choices in life, but things are also more readily available, and there are pros and cons. So I think for wrestling pay-per-views, specifically for AEW and our business model, the pay-per-views are definitely easier to access. I mean, when I was a kid trying to order wrestling pay-per-views, before there was AEW and WWE, there was WCW and the WWF. And of course, WWF changed their name, became the WWE, whereas AEW has launched, and now we are a brand new company celebrating 3 years of doing shows this week. And with our young history, we've seen great growth in pay-per-view. And I think in part due to, as you said, the accessibility of pay-per-views. If I wanted to watch a WCW pay-per-view, and for some perspective, WCW was a company that had their shows on TBS and TNT also. And there was a gap of almost 2 decades before TBS and TNT aired wrestling again. For TBS, actually, specifically, I guess it was basically 2 decades before they got back into the wrestling business. TNT slightly less, because we launched on TNT in 2019. And so it was about 18 and a half years they were out. And the WCW and WWF pay-per-views, when I was a kid, you had to have not just a regular cable box, which was already an expensive thing, but it was in many homes. You had to have a very unique cable box that was like you had to put in a deposit on it to order pay-per-views in the early to mid 90s. Then as there were advancements, the boxes became better and you were able to order from home. When I was a kid, then we switched over to DirecTV, and it became even easier to order the pay-per-views, and I get more than I already had. And now I think whether you're streaming or cable or satellite, it's easier than ever with a click to order them. The challenges are the saturation of not in pro wrestling, because I think right now we're in a good balance of pro wrestling where there's 2 really strong companies in North America and a third strong company internationally, New Japan Pro Wrestling, who we also have collaborated with, who also used to be partners with WCW, very fittingly. So I think there's just a lot of challenge with so many events on TV, so many things happening. Normally people use that as a reason why things haven't worked for them. For us, I think we've been able to beat that, grow the company and grow our pay-per-view business, where again, all 4 of our pay-per-view franchises have grown year over year over year. So it's pros and cons, as with all entertainment and all properties. And if you're defying gravity and actually going up, not just staying the same place, but actually going up, that's damn good.
And your pay-per-view business, you're basically seeing for each event year over year growth, right? Like there's constant upward movement for you. Domestically,
yes, we have 4 quarterly events that are our primary AEW shows, and we've done all of them 3 times now, and all of them have gone up year over year. And so we've seen that growth with 3 years of data for each event under our belt, where it's gone up. Like it's gone up and then up again. Yeah.
That's the best benchmark that it's growing in popularity, and your decisions are working out. On the topic of streaming, but a different type of streaming, you embraced YouTube to distribute 2 full shows, right? You have AEW Dark and Elevation, and they're syndicated through YouTube. And I'm guessing that's syndicated globally via YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes, they're also available on Fight TV, and we're starting to see TV carriers interested in Dark and Elevation, particularly as we feature a lot of international wrestlers on Dark and Elevation. So there's a number of really valuable aspects to the show. They also have served as a developmental league in many ways to bring stars up to Dynamite and Rampage. So a lot of the TV stars you see on Dynamite and Rampage week in, week out are people that got their beginning really on Dark and Elevation as preliminary wrestlers, often competing against an established star, working their way in before they themselves were winning matches on Dark and Elevation, and then trying to break through to wrestle on Dynamite and Rampage. And we have a lot of success stories there. And it's also helped us build a more diverse, better roster. So there are a lot of really good things about being able to put Dark and Elevation on YouTube and distribute those shows, and also clips of big moments from Dynamite, Rampage, and our pay-per-view events to grow interest in Dynamite, Rampage, and our pay-per-view events around the world.
There's actually this be really interesting case studies if you can take a YouTube show and it ends up becoming a TV show somewhere. I think that is, you don't see that very often. So that would be kind of cool if that does pull off.
Internationally, I think there's going to be places where they carry Dark and Elevation possibly as TV property. So we'll see. There's been some interest in it. So it is very cool. I'm not sure it's going to happen anytime soon in the United States, but I also think that what they provide us on YouTube in the United States is really valuable. Yeah,
because you still can monetize that content, and it's always on, always available. So if someone wants to interact with your content or your brand, it's there. You touched on something as well about like some of the talent who started on Dark and Elevation and worked their way up. Do you use the data? Is there data available from YouTube where you can kind of see like where viewership spikes perhaps, or people are watching specific talent over and over again? And if so, does that influence your decisions about long-term planning?
Yes, we see not only who drove engagement, who drove viewership of these YouTube shows, we also see where people were watching around the world. So you get a lot of data from AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation on YouTube. And that's been another really valuable aspect, is the data we gather.
I think that sometimes is lost, especially when the wrestling media in this country is very myopic in its view and doesn't really see the wider scale that there are international interests and rights that can be monetized here.
Yeah. And also to your point, something that I learned a lot about from you, where I think you're one of the preeminent experts in the world, Gavin, and where we've tried to, and it's fast and it's free ad supported streaming, and you know so much about it. I've learned a lot about it from you, and we look to expand our offerings potentially there. And I'm sure that's something you'd might want to talk about again this year, as we talked about it in the past extensively, and you're an expert in it. And when you have all that content that is AEW owned and doesn't have some of the clearance issues that you would have with Dynamite from TBS or Rampage from TNT, and the footage that's that TV footage, as far as putting full matches, full shows up, it's not really ideal or sustainable. So that's where Dark and Elevation, we've done now hundreds of episodes. We've done over 150 episodes of AEW Dark, and closing in on 100 episodes soon, this year of Elevation also. And with those shows, again, we've been able to build up the roster, build up the company, but it also gives us really valuable content, not only on YouTube, but the content that could potentially really be a backbone for a free ad supported streaming service without cannibalizing our premium TV properties, Dynamite or Rampage, with Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS and Friday Night Rampage on TNT being key properties for us that we don't want to make available. And especially as we look to possibly build a streaming service in the future where these are premium products, it makes no sense to put them on fast. But with Dark and Elevation, we have so much content. It's crazy how many matches we've shot over those hundreds of shows across Dark and Dark Elevation, which is a kind of a spinoff second series that we launched. And having those shows on Mondays and Tuesdays leading into Wednesday, Friday, Dynamite and Rampage, it's a good cadence for us. It's great for development. It's going to be good assets for us for fast. And we did a best of Dark and Elevation. It's crazy how many good matches are on it. You could easily do a TV show anywhere in the world. Some of the matches happen in the pandemic now, which isn't ideal without fans there. But even in shows, packed arenas all over the world, we've taped Dark at the United Center with 15,000 fans. We've taped Dark at an Elevation in some of the biggest arenas in the world. I've taped Elevation at Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe Stadium. So it's pretty amazing what we've been able to do with those shows, and considering that in some ways they're only a small part of our portfolio, but they're underrated assets for sure.
Well, you hit it on the head with Fast, because it's not necessarily, I would never think of that as a tool for you to distribute current pay-per-views on, or, unless someone sponsored it, right? And they were like, we'll give you like $5 million or $10 million and then you can do it free and we'll sell the ads during it. Like that, maybe. But it's much more a tool to monetize old assets. That's what I see with like the big media companies, A&E, AMC, they're pulling in 20, 25 million a year. All right. Not money that is going to break the bank, but for anyone, that's nice extra money to find. And it's utilizing old assets. They're not putting on the current season of The Walking Dead, but they have a Walking Dead channel with old seasons on it. And like to what you're saying, Dark Elevation, you could package it up like the best of every wrestler who's been on it, for instance, right? Like, whoever's in, there's so many different ways to cut it. And yeah, it's also the reach. It potentially lets you, well, kind of like what you have on YouTube, to be honest. It's a way to reach people who don't have cable, right? And then you can actually get them engaged in your product. Do you, and actually the other thing you mentioned before, which I found very interesting, was just having like how you have Tony Schiavone in the AEW, was it the media center, and he gives the updates and the rundowns?
The control center.
Yeah, the control center. You could do more, like that's such an easy lift for Fast. I say that because I'm actually having a conversation this week with a very big sports league in this country about potentially having a Fast channel. And their plans really weren't what you'd expect if you want people to watch it. It was very much, let's just put repeats of old games, which is kind of what you see on some of the, like, I think the NFL Fast channel is like that. MLB is a bit more documentary and old games, but you're going to get more people in if you create stuff that they're going to want to watch. And it sounds like you've got that kind of kernel already underway.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of those same thoughts. And it's a great way also to provide not only revenue, but also advertising for the current TV shows. As you said, Tony Schiavone in the Control Center, giving updates on what to expect this week on AEW Dynamite or AEW Rampage. That's good content to keep people aware. And if somebody buys a smart TV and looks and they get that AEW Fast channel for free, hopefully it drives them to watch TBS or TNT on that channel, or excuse me, on that smart TV, and log into those channels, then watch AEW Dynamite on TBS, watch AEW Rampage on TNT, and then further complement the revenue we're getting from the Fast channel with new viewers for Warner Brothers Discovery.
Yeah, it's a funnel up. There's lots of media companies say it. Some of them do it right. I won't say the ones who don't. Maybe we'll share notes one day. But there is definitely a way.
Speaking of notes that we can share, I've since gathered that AEW right now is available in 130 countries around the world.
That is how many countries are there? 200? So that's most countries of the world.
Yeah.
That's really impressive for a 3-year growth.
Yes.
It's quite, I would say, not perhaps beyond your wildest dreams, but you've got to be pretty happy with how things have fallen out.
Absolutely. We're in a great position, and I'm happiest as a wrestling fan because there's great wrestling on TV every single week now, thanks to AEW giving great competition and putting on great shows every Wednesday and Friday night, and some weekends too. We got a big pay-per-view coming up on May 29th, Double or Nothing. It's where it all began for us in Las Vegas, and I think we'll hit new heights again at Double or Nothing.
Like I said, I'm going to actually be in Monaco, so I've got to figure out a way to watch this, but I will find a way because it looks like a great card.
Well, on the Fight app, I think the Fight app was your friend over there. It'll hopefully be able to provide you with the TV shows on AEW Plus on the run up to Double or Nothing. And also you can order Double or Nothing on Fight. And they have a very fan-friendly, very user-friendly app.
I'll make sure I have that then, because that might be how I spend some time there.
I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. I don't know if you're a Fight user, but they have an interesting business model, and they have a user-friendly app. And internationally, we've done a lot of business with them, a little bit domestically, but more international. So if you get on AEW Plus and on buy Double or Nothing on there, I'd love to hear your experiences with it, because you're a very avid expert in the field, Gavin.
Oh, thank you. I'll send them. I will definitely do my best to do that and send them to you. I have a personal-ish question about Fast. I was on a podcast recently. You're not the only one invited to wrestling podcasts here. I was on Business of the Business, and they were asking me about Fast in general, but the fact that Ring of Honor's Fast channel recently stopped broadcasting. It was on Stir, which is Sinclair's service, and also on Plex. Was that your decision, or was that just a Sinclair asset that kind of ceased once the purchase was finalized?
Well, Sinclair, for those who don't know, they were the previous owners of Ring of Honor. So the agreement for the channel to continue wasn't something in the contract. Wasn't anything that we agreed to in the contract. And I think right now I have such great television relationships in America, with all due respect to them. Right now, Warner Brothers Discovery, our media partner, is the largest content creator in the world. So I was very happy to buy Ring of Honor from Sinclair. And now I think it gives the portfolio that much more strength, cachet. There's really good synergy, I believe, between AEW and Ring of Honor together. And working with Ring of Honor and AEW together, I believe that we can eventually build a solution where all of the best events, really all of the events from TV and pay-per-view from these great companies could exist, hopefully in one place that would be very accessible and a good functional platform for the fans to use, where wrestling fans can not only get those shows, but hopefully more new, exciting content we can generate in the future, not only from AEW, but also from Ring of Honor. And that's where I think it's the sweet spot and a good synergy for us, where I was probably the logical buyer, even though I was not the only interested party.
Yeah, I was bidding too. Representing Variety and PMC. We were trying to branch out. You may put a thought in my head with that, though, because you have this new, we've spoken about your concept of the Forbidden Door in previous interviews, and you have a strengthened relationship with New Japan, who Ring of Honor traditionally were partners with, and you're having a co-branded New Japan pay-per-view coming up in just over a month. Do you see a world perhaps where there could be a Forbidden Door style wrestling service where you have partnerships with other companies, not necessarily owning them, but if you have a good relationship with New Japan, could there be a system where they link together?
Yes. Well, it's interesting you say that, because now in Japan, AEW Dynamite and AEW Rampage stream on New Japan World. So we've already put our TV shows, our big premium weekly products, AEW Dynamite and AEW Rampage, on the international streaming service of our partner there in Japan. It's a great partnership for everyone. And they send some of their stars also to compete on our shows. We're collaborating on a pay-per-view that's already sold a ton of tickets. Both of the pay-per-views coming up for us in the next couple months this summer, AEW Double or Nothing, our big quarterly event in Las Vegas, and this Forbidden Door pay-per-view in collaboration with New Japan Pro Wrestling. They both generated over $1 million just in live ticket sales from Double or Nothing at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, over 1.1 million in tickets already. And AEW and New Japan collaborating on Forbidden Door June 26th at the United Center, also on pay-per-view. And we've sold over $1 million in tickets already for that show. So really exciting times in the live event business, the pay-per-view business, the TV business, and wide open in the streaming business, with a great portfolio of assets at a really exciting time in a number of different ways to approach streaming, both premium and free.
On the topic of premium, you fooled us all, me included. I was putting out quotes from our last interview in the run up to the Dynamite, where you said, I have this big announcement, and everyone figured it was going to be some sort of SVOD deal, and it ended up being your purchase of Ring of Honor. But you really tricked all of us analysts there. I'm not going to grill you on anything because you can't talk about stuff that's happening or potentially, in discussion. But eventually, I'm assuming you will end up on some sort of SVOD service because, you have valuable content that everyone at this point has almost maximized all the other rights. So you're sort of becoming more valuable, I think, with the amount of time that goes on because people are going to need more content that can attract eyeballs. Do you see this as a way to sort of, if there was if stuff was available on an SVOD, is this a way to maximize your audience? Because I'm assuming there are some cord cutters who probably would be AEW fans, for instance, if they could access it. Do you see that is this likely as a possibility in the next year or two?
I can't say because I'm only one party, but I definitely think that there's interest on our side, and I feel that there could be interest, hopefully, on the side of the new Warner Brothers Discovery. It's a new group of people coming in just as we speak. Really, announcements are still being made about the new company that's being formed. But one thing I know is that, as I've said, they are the largest producers of content in the world. And they have great entities in streaming. And I definitely think they could be a great fit together with AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery and their great streaming platforms. One that has gained a lot of following in a relatively short amount of time and has grown and continues to produce some of the best content in the world, not just in all of streaming, but in the world of entertainment, period, is HBO Max. And HBO Max is awesome platform. It would be a dream for AEW to be involved with them in some way, but that's not just up to us. So I definitely think as things go on, like you said, as new content's being developed, AEW continues to be some of the fastest growing, most popular sports content out there right now on TV. And it bodes really well for us because it's really an untapped reserve of great shows. Jim Ross, old JR, the wrestling announcer, is the most experienced broadcaster in all of pro wrestling by far, and probably maybe the most famous wrestling announcer, dare I say, of all time. And he's called a lot of the best events, biggest events, highest grossing events in the history of the wrestling business. He called our event All Out last year, which is still our record event late last year that we did the biggest revenue we've ever done, over 205,000 pay-per-view buys around the world. And it was a huge hit for us. He called it the best wrestling event he's ever broadcast or seen. And that he is not one known for hyperbole. In fact, he's known for probably being too harsh of a critic and being too dug in his ways. And I think he's great, and he's very honest. And he's been very honest in his opinions of AEW. And when he said that, I really think he meant it. And he's, it's 3 years we've been doing that. And that's the first time he'd said that. And we've done great events. I think we had some great shows, but for him to say it was the best one he's seen or done, I mean, that was saying something. And since then we've continued having great shows, and I hope Double or Nothing can keep that high standard going.
Well, I would say it's actually, I think, somewhat refreshing as a viewer. If you watch soccer and something bad happens, the commentators say it, right? It's refreshing from the perspective, I think, from a wrestling fan, that it's not this sort of robotic, I'm not trying to be too critical, but it just seems normal. Like, sometimes he gets critics on the internet. I kind of like surly Jim Ross. He actually makes me laugh every now and again where he just sort of says stuff, but it's an opinion. It's more human sometimes. And I think it adds to the experience of watching.
I really like Jim Ross too. We just extended his contract. I think he adds a lot to the performance, and he's been doing it for a long time, and he still is not anywhere near ready to retire. So I'm going to keep Jim going. I really love his work. Also, in English football, you mentioned the commentators often are brutally honest. We have our own commentator at Fulham, the host of the broadcasts, and the commentator is Gentleman Jim, so a different Jim than Jim Ross. But one thing they have in common is they're both very honest and both ton of experience broadcasting their sport, and they're going to tell you their honest opinions. So when Fulham clinched promotion to the Premier League, the fans were very excited, and the supporters invaded the pitch, and Gentleman Jim was the first to let you know what he thought of it, and he didn't like it at all. And when everyone else was really enjoying it, and Gentleman Jim talked about all the drawbacks when we're celebrating the promotion. Gentleman Jim really talked about the negatives of the pitch invasions. And to be honest, we had 2 pitch invasions because not only did we clinch promotion, but then we won the league outright. So our fans invaded the pitch twice, and I think ours were pretty safe, thankfully. And there have been some other ones that weren't so good. And I really am very thankful to our supporters in London, the Fulham fans who came to Craven Cottage for both those big wins. And especially thankful that when we did celebrate those victories and getting those points and those milestones of achieving promotion to the Premier League and also winning the English Football League Championship, it was very peaceful when they invaded the pitch. So hopefully not a pattern of, on the other hand, you want good things to happen. So I only bring it up as Gentleman Jim and Jim Ross actually have a lot of things in common there.
Well, I did actually want to congratulate you on that, because everyone who's watching, you may not also know that Tony is the co-owner of Fulham, and you also you have a role in, or you had. I don't know if you still have the role.
I do. Yeah, I'm the director of football. I'm the head of transfers and recruitment, so I manage the loans and transfers, and I work with our head coach Marco Silva to manage the recruitment of players, and I'm in charge of transfers and loans and have the final say on all the players we sign or the contracts we sell or transfer or loan.
So that came through very well this year, because especially during that Christmas period where you were just smashing everyone to bits, it must have been a very good feeling to see that. Like, I forgot his name, but the striker, didn't he set a goal record by like the middle of the season? It was
yeah, and he continued that pace. So he scored 43 goals in 44 matches, which is a heck of a pace. Alexander Mitrovic, who's been with us a long time, Mitro, he had won the Golden Boot 2 years ago, and he scored just over half as many goals as he did this year under our new coach, Marco Silva, and the exciting football that the club is playing, which philosophically, he and I are completely shoulder to shoulder. And he's just done such a great job coaching and leading the team. Marco Silva has. And we had a lot of great players that just weren't being utilized at all. Honestly, they were just not even playing in the games at all. And he's gotten them back in, and not only gotten them back in the lineup, but also in having them in the squad, they've excelled. And Alexander Mitrovic in particular, our new acquisition, Harry Wilson, who's come in, who we transferred in from Liverpool. He's done really well for us. He also set a record for assists that went hand in hand with Mitro's record for goals. So great seasons for them and for all of our players. And it was just a great year at Fulham. And yes, it was very gratifying to get back to the Premier League. And I love doing that. Since 2016, I've managed the transfers at Fulham, and I've been the director of football since the beginning of 2017. So it's been 6 seasons that I've done it. And this was the most fun I've ever had.
Speaking as someone who's always watched the lower leagues, when your team goes on a tear, there's still such good quality football. It's such a nice feeling as a fan. I think it's better than sort of being a glory hunter and always expecting to win, because you can really appreciate, like when you have those good spells, they feel like so much more special. But I know we're almost at time. I did want to say, based on what you said there, it sounds like your philosophy for pretty much all your ventures is to have like an exciting style, whether it's wrestling, whether it's football. You want to entertain the fans, give them their money's worth. Is that
but that's not if it's not for entertaining the fans that we play an exciting style of football at Fulham. The style of football I believe is the best style to win games, is an aggressive, exciting style of football. And we have a swashbuckling head coach who feels the same way that I do. And I think that's why we've come together so well. It's a sign of the times in post-COVID when we were still in lockdown in England when he was hired. So I did his interview on Zoom and met him. And the only time I had actually physically met him before, he was the head coach of Everton when we played Everton in the Premier League several years ago. And I've always really admired him as a coach. And then we got to know each other much better on Zoom. And it was just a great fit. But the style of football he plays is what I believe is the best style. And the players we recruited were recruited to play that style. And at times that maybe we got away from it. So it was good to play that style this year. And I look forward to being fast and aggressive, fun team that hopefully will continue to score goals and play good defense as we did this year in the championship.
Well, a perfect note to end. Best of luck with the Premier League. Best of luck for Double or Nothing and the summer with AEW and Ring of Honor. And we'll look forward to talking with you again sometime.
Thank you, Gavin. Hopefully I'll get to see you this time next year. It's become a great tradition now doing this twice with you, and hopefully we can continue it. And I always enjoy talking to you and learning from you.
Oh, thank you. Well, likewise, it's a, I think that I like to think that well, it's just nice that you actually discuss things. You're very open, and it really leads to good discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.